Boatworks today is sponsored by Total Boat and Alexseal Yacht Coatings, as well as supported by the generosity from the beautiful folks over on Patreon. Thank you so much. Let's try this again now, shall we? So, welcome back everybody. Hope you're having a fantastic week. My name is Andy with Boatworks today. In this video, with a little bit of luck, we're gonna get the rest of the Coosa laid up on this transom. Now, before we can get started with that, there's a little bit of prep work that needs to get done. So with that said, let's just jump right into it. Now, if you remember from last week, I kind of screwed up a little bit. I mixed up two fairly decent sized batches of filler, poly-based filler, and well, I kind of under-catalyzed them, but we're not going to dwell on that. We're moving on. So after peeling all that crap off, I had to clean up the surface. Now, this isn't cleaned 100%. It's kind of about as good as I can get it though. So after I peeled off the stuff that did not set up, I came in and I wiped this area down with the surface cleaner de-waxer, the Total Boat stuff. And that worked fairly well. I mean, the material was already, it was half set up. It was half gelled, so I mean, it's not like it was gonna start to like just melt and you could just wipe it off. It wasn't quite under-catalyzed that bad. So, but I wiped it down quite a few times and then I let it dry out and then I came in and I sanded it with some 60 grit. So there's still a little bit left right in through here, but it feels fairly hard, and right in through here, it's right down the bare Coosa. Now, just as a real quick overview of what I'm hoping to be able to accomplish this week. Now, overall, I would like to get a couple new layers of Coosa that extend out through this wing, as well as over to here, as well as top going all the way down to the bottom. But in order for that to happen, I need to kind of even out the surface a little bit. If you look over in these corners specifically, so hopefully the camera's gonna be able to pick this up, but there's a bit of a height difference between here and here. I'd say this is roughly maybe close to half an inch, maybe a little bit less. And then it varies as you go top to bottom. Now across the top here, that's already pretty even. But again, when you get over towards the port side, we're still kind of dealing with that same kind of unevenness. Now before I can lay in the Coosa, I need to build up these low spots so that the Coosa itself, when it's actually put in place, has a nice, even surface contact. It's not going to be trapping any kind of gaps or voids behind it. So, in order to do that, I'm going to be using a filler, and it's going to be the same filler that I used last week, except this week I'm not going to make the same mistake. It's going to be the Total Boat. It's their structural repair putty. Essentially, it's a polyester-based material. It's already pre-thickened, and it's got milled glass fibers already, kind of mixed into it. So it's for this kind of application, I think it's going to work out pretty much perfect. But before I start mixing up material and just kind of slapping it on here, I want to try and get a better feel for, well, one, how much resin or filler I'm actually going to need. But specifically, I want to get a better idea as far as how far out or how much of this area actually needs to be built up, just so that I'm not creating a lot more sanding for myself, down the road. And in order to figure that out, I'm going to be using this. This is just a cheap little cut-off, little 1/8 inch or 16th inch piece of plywood. And the way that this is going to work is I'm going to take this, hopefully this is going to show up on camera, but basically lay it so this side is flat on this face, and then push it here so that it's flat on here. Now what I'm going to be looking to do then is basically make a mark where there's still a gap. So you can see there's a pretty good gap here, but I want to basically mark right where it starts to lay flat on both surfaces again. So right about there, and one right there. And I'm just going to continue doing this at different angles. On both the port and starboard side. So here I'm basically looking to fill in this area, kind of coming down about like this. All right, now to avoid any potential screw-ups, I'm actually going to measure this stuff out. If I remember correctly, I think the first time I did this, I think I scooped out, I didn't measure it, but I think it was around 16 ounces worth of material. So that's what I'm going to do. Except this time, instead of throwing it in a pile and just trying to eyeball the mech, I'm going to actually scoop out 16 ounces, put it in this cup, and then I know that being a polyester-based resin, this stuff, I know that you want to catalyze this between 1% and 2%. So for 16 ounces of material, that would be between 5 to 10 cc's of MEK, or methyl alpha ketone with peroxide. And for measuring that out, they've got these pretty snazzy little dispenser things that has all the cc marked on the top of this cone. So so for now, I'm gonna wait and let this sit up. Like I said, I'll be back in probably about another, probably 45 minutes or so, 45 minutes or an hour. I want the majority of this set up. Now, I suppose now that I've got a little time, I can mention that. Now, this material, because, being polyester based, this particular filler does not contain any wax in it. So, I mean, essentially, this is a laminating type of, material. So I can come back in an hour, go over top of it, no problems. I could wait till 2-3 days and come back and go right over top of it without having to sand. Now, because of that though, before I can sand, I am going to have to go over top of this with something to cure the surface. And I've covered this many times. Most likely, basically you can go over it with either some type of a polyester-based material that contains wax, or you can use PVA or polyvinyl alcohol. Most likely, I'm probably just going to go over with some gel coat that contains wax. But I'll make that decision here in a little bit. Right now, I'm going to go answer some emails. That's what I'm talking about. Sweet. All right. Mix up another batch. It's probably going to be about half the size of, probably a quarter of the size of what I did this first round. But let me get that mixed up, get this muttered over, and let it do its thing. Well, good morning. Let's see how we did. I think we did pretty good. All right, so the material set up, that's a good thing. Now, how close did we actually get on our build here? Well, I got good even contact all the way across right here. A little high right here, but that'll get sanded down eventually. This all looks good. Now, when I lay this up, when I lay the new Coosa in with the thickened epoxy, the epoxy will be able to take up some gaps, not a lot. This is a little bit too much, but I think it's being held up by some right here. There's a ridge right there. So I think this will probably come in. I mean, if I'm down to like an 1/8 inch of a gap, which I will be once I sand down this little lip here, but like a profile like this, that's perfect. I think the Coosa will conform to that and no problems. So at this point, I'm happy with the build and the profile that I got off of laying up that structural putty last night. So now I guess at this point, I think I'm ready to actually start sanding it and kind of smoothing things out. But before I can do that, I need to cure this surface. Now, I mentioned earlier in this video that this repair putty, this is a laminating base, meaning it doesn't have any kind of a wax, kind of mixed into it. So you need to go over top of that with something, in order to seal this off from the air, so this repair putty itself can actually fully cure in sand without gumming up a bunch of your sandpaper. Now, before I and for doing that, I'm probably going to go over with like a waxed gel coat, just because that's what I have, and I like using that stuff. It shows up good on camera, and well, it just works. Now, before I do that, I want to make up my templates for cutting the new pieces of Coosa, because once I coat this with the gel coat, I'm pretty much going to be hands off of this for, well, probably the rest of the day, because it's going to be tacky until it fully cures, which will probably be until tomorrow morning. So before I lay the gel coat on here, I want to get the templates made, pull those off, then I can coat this, and then while that's doing its thing, then I can start cutting the Coosa. That makes sense, right? so let's take a closer look at what's going on with this template. Now, this isn't exactly what I was, I guess, envisioning initially, but I don't think, just because of the shape and the profile of, the actual stock transom, I don't think that what I wanted to do was really possible, to be honest. So I think this is kind of the best compromise that I can find. Now, it's still accomplishing what I wanted to do. Now, right in through here, through this middle section, this is where the top mounting bolts for the Armstrong bracket are going to go through. So right in through here, and then there's another set down along the bottom here. But right in this area, I was able to extend this out probably another foot on both the port and the starboard side compared to what it was originally. So I'm able to distribute that out more, as well as extend this up maybe about 10 inches all the way up. Again, just kind of distributing that force from the transom over a larger area. Now, I'm hoping that I've got enough Coosa material left, at least in the 1/2 inch thickness, to be able to get 3 more layers of the Coosa laid in to this profile. If I'm able to do that, that'll give me 1.5 inches, plus what's already there, 1.5 inches, so up to 3. So 3 inches of core plus the inner and the outer fiberglass skins, figured another close to a 1/2 inch there. That'll give me a transom thickness overall of around 3.5 inches, which I think that's pretty good. I think that's going to be more than adequate for what kind of engines could potentially be bracketed on here. And then also along the bottom, I'm going to have additional knees to reinforce the bottom section of that transom where I wasn't really able to spread it out as wide as I would like. But I think the additional knees, that's going to be under compression. I think that's going to work out just fine. So we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. Now, the only thing that I don't know at this point is after I cut the Coosa, if it's going to actually be able to take the bend, from the curvature in this. There isn't a whole lot of bend that needs to happen, but there is some, primarily just along, the say 16 inches of these 2 wings. Top to bottom, this is pretty much all dead flat. So the 1/2 inch material is fairly flexible. I don't think I'm going to have a problem getting it to conform to this curvature of the transom, but until we do it, we don't actually know. Well, I got to get a little creative with pushing this in, but it's going to work. Yeah, it takes the contour just fine. So I'm going to have to get a little creative here on how I cut these pieces, because this one piece, keeping it whole, it pretty much chewed through like 3/4 of a board or a whole 4x8 sheet of Coosa. And well, if I continue to cut full-size pieces, I don't have enough material. So what I think I'm going to do is on the second layer, or the layer that's going to go on top of this, I'm going to cut this into sections. So this strip going all the way across is going to be one large section. And then I'll just have a top and a bottom. And then going over top of that, then I think I'm going to have another full-size sheet. I do have enough material to do that, because if I cut these into pieces, for this next second layer, I think I can use up the rest of that panel that I got this off of. And I've got one more full panel left, and I'll be able to get the third over top of this, which, well, I think that's about all I need. Well, I'm sure I'm going to need more, but it'll at least get the transom finished. This has been a long thing going, so yeah, this is going to be one of the most expensive damn transoms I've ever put in, that's for sure. Ugh. So for right now, this is basically proof of concept here, and well, I know it's going to work now, so I can sleep a little bit better tonight. I am going to have to put each of these 3 layers in, 1 layer at a time, so put it in, butter it all up, let it cure, go in the following morning, and just basically repeat that process until all 3 layers are in. Just because if I try and do all 3 at the same time, things are going to shift around with a bed of epoxy between these panels. Things are going to shift, and it'll be a complete nightmare. So 1 layer at a time, and a little bit of tweaking on these braces to make sure I can get good pressure up against this transom. That said, all of that is going to have to wait until next weekend. So as always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that thumbs up button. If you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Thank you in advance, appreciate that. If you have any questions, comments, please leave those down below. I'll do my best to get back with you, and as always, thank you for your time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week, hopefully when we're glassing all this in. Have a great weekend.
This has been a Boatworks Today production.